Welcome everyone to the FY19 season of the AFO BMG. I cannot believe summer is over already. I'm Gloria Keeley. For those of you who haven't met me, I'm the Interim Assistant Vice President for Business and Finance here in Chicago. And as I said, I would like to welcome everyone here today. I have just a couple of opening thoughts, and then we have a full agenda today, so we'll get to it quickly. My first opening thought is to thank those who are retiring from service to the university for their long years of service. Jackie Finch is a person I know, but if there are others of you, I need to make note and recognize that there are many dedicated people who work at the university who have given us many years of service, and we certainly need to appreciate and recognize them. Is there anyone here who is here for the first time, new to the university? Well, welcome. I hope to get to meet you soon, and I hope you find today to be a good learning experience for you. I would also invite you to reach out to us at OBFS anytime you have questions, or if you would like to review with us some of the training opportunities that are available, please feel free to reach out to us. I have one kind of mixed observation today for you. I was shocked this morning to learn that one of the people on my floor of Marshfield experienced a relative who was the victim of gun violence over the weekend. And in the sadness of that, I realized that it is truly an honor to be part of an institution where we have world-class researchers working to make positive change in the world every single day, and we do important work to support that research and those initiatives. And again, I want to appreciate and thank you for that work that you do as well. On to more mundane topics. We're all working through fiscal year end, UAFR in particular, finishing up on the financial statements for this year. So there's lots of work and activity going on around that. At the same time, as we are preparing the financial statements for FY18, we are finishing the audit for FY17. And I wanted to thank those of you. The auditors this year seem to have had particularly full and rich questions for us, and we've had to reach out many times to you, and I want to thank all of you for getting those responses turned around quickly. The time pressure is intense on the audit process. For several reasons. First of all, we have some federal responses that are required. We also have deadlines that require us to submit our audit to the state. But in addition to that, it saves the university thousands and thousands of dollars if we can reduce the timeline a little bit. So again, I appreciate your quick turnaround on all those activities. I haven't heard news about scheduling a legislative audit commission meeting yet, so we're waiting with bated breath, as they say, to see how the legislature feels about the work that we're doing here at the university. But last year's audit was pretty clean, and I think this year's audit is looking pretty good as well. Speaking of legislative attention, while we haven't got it in the audit area, we are getting more than our fair share in the BEP area, the Business Enterprise Program. There have been several conversations with legislators about the university's participation in that Business Enterprise Program. There has been attention given to the state procurement officer about his engagement in our goal-setting process. So I just wanted you all to be aware that to the extent we can find diverse vendors to supply our needs, it's a very important thing for us to do. Not certainly only because the legislators are watching and that impacts our budget in the long run, but because it's the right thing to do as well. And we're working on ways to provide more and better information about diverse vendors that are registered with the state. One of our additional challenges is they need to be certified in order for us to be counted, in order for their activities with us to be counted. And we have folks who do outreach around that, but also if you have a diverse vendor you're working with and they are not certified, certainly reach out to us and we can help them go through that process. Some emerging issues, and I'm going to just lay them out I'm sort of a person who would prefer to do a few things at a time and get them over with, but I find in my current circumstance that's not possible because there are lots and lots of issues, and we try and move them forward a little bit over time every week. I wanted to make you aware of the things that are particularly on my plate and also invite you to, if you don't hear one of your favorite hot topics, send requests to me that if we're not paying attention to something that's important for you, please let us know that. So emerging issue number 1, compliance with the 7.4 reimbursement policy has been challenging for many folks, and we're going to make some procedural changes in that process that I think you will find to be beneficial. We are taking a look at business class travel when you can and when you can't. This involves, of course, interaction with the Higher Education Travel Control Board and to a certain extent other legislators. So it's not an easy process, but we are engaging in how and when it is appropriate to ask for those kind of upgrades as well as potentially seat upgrades on airplanes. Nothing to report there yet, other than that there is active conversation. We are looking at payments to students, which continues to be a challenge in terms of both how to decide which way you process what kind of things, but also from a taxation standpoint. And so we are hoping to clarify that for you in the not too distant future. We are looking at moving expenses, since moving expenses are now all virtually taxable, and what that might mean for easier ways to support moves at the university. And we are looking at cell phone stipends and purchases. The policy was updated this summer. However, recent news from the state is that there is new legislation that is going to have us looking at that policy yet again, so stay tuned for further developments. In the audience now, I guess I would take a minute and say, are there any other emerging issues I need to be aware of and pay attention to that you're willing to shout out now? Everything is going perfectly. That's excellent. So let's get on to our agenda today. I'd like to welcome up Amber Munns, who is going to talk about, well, something that's not going exactly perfectly, but that is moving along nicely, the Source to Pay project.
Oh, Amber's behind me. I can't get my mouse. It's not trying to get over there.
Oh my goodness.
Isn't that something?
You're getting it.
Oh, there we go. And so you just hit this one to get to the next one, okay?
Okay, all right, thank you.
Good afternoon. I know I was listed on the agenda as tentative, but I want to make a commitment now to let you know that every other month I will be coming back to each and every one of the BMG meetings to let everybody know what is going on. So there is a progression, and everybody can see that progression, and you can let me know at any point through all of that as the Source to Pay initiative continues forward, when and if you are interested in becoming involved and how you might like to be involved. We're always interested in hearing from everybody the kinds of things that they would like to have input into. So please feel free to let me know, flag me down, and I will put you on the groups that talk about these issues. So we will come back to the Source to Pay project, which I was back in the May timeframe saying that we really thought that we were going to be posting an RFP over the summer and evaluating those respondents over the summer and the early fall. After more in-depth conversation and look at the marketplace, we really, as a team and with input from many of our university focus group members, Decided to go with an RFI initially, really delve into what's available in the marketplace as far as functionality, and really get a feel for what's possible given what the source to pay process entails. It's a lot. It's everything from the requisition and trying to figure out how to buy those things that you want and put them in that requisition all the way through the payment. And so the RFP is undergoing further development and refinement. And I'm here today, though, to talk about the short-term improvements. So anyone that was part of those BPI sessions that had input into the process and had suggestions for improvements, those are first and foremost on the agenda for today and what the team is looking at right now as the RFI moves forward. So coming soon is going to be that RFP, but we're looking at it later in the fall, and the evaluation then of respondents to follow that. So we're looking at including as many university employees as possible from all different areas of the organization to make sure that we really have complete and thorough input. But the opportunities for focus group and BPI participant input continues, and they continue to be contacted. Most recently, to have a conversation with us, we engaged a consultant, and Huron Consulting is right now looking at all of the BPI sessions, and we extended an invitation to everyone that was part of the BPI sessions to be a part of those Huron focus groups as well. So those were over the summer, and those were very successful as well. A lot of participation there. So the short-term improvements really were ideas and thoughts that were given throughout the BPI sessions by everyone that's part of the process, whether they're part of purchasing, payables, university units, anybody and everybody touched by the source to pay process. And those short-term improvements really were put into 4 different categories around process, policy, procedures, and resources. And they really did not require major changes to the organization and could be achieved really in short time frames. So those were moved forward, and as part of that, there were 14 over the last 6 months that were completed, 15 that are currently in process, and then another 95 that are openly and actively being discussed and talked about as far as scheduling and resources available to achieve them. So of the 14 that were completed, they really revolved around these processes that are on the source to pay website. Out on the OBFS website, there is several pages dedicated to the source to pay initiative, and everything is categorized into the 24 or 26 processes that are out there. So 14 of the short-term improvements revolved mostly around new vendor setup and the creation of requisitions, whether they be multiple or one-time purchases, and then a few around payment processing, whether they be PO invoice or invoice feeders. The 15 that are currently in process have the potential to improve the requisition review and assignment process, as well as payment processing and creation of requisitions, the one-time and multiple purchases, making that process even better, and the payment processing, whether it be to non-employees or employees through the TEM system. And then those remaining 95 really impact some of the ones that I already listed, as well as the remaining processes. So over the next 6 to 12 months, we're going to continue to work on those, pull people in that were part of the BPIs, also probably put out some communications asking for any other takers, anybody else that might be interested in those processes, to help us make those better, help us make decisions on how to make those better. As part of the presentation that I submitted, I've put the link for the actual page that has the short-term improvements listed. So it tells you what the suggestion was and how it was resolved. And then if it gives, more detailed information that needs to be accessed. The link to that more detailed information is right there too, so you can link right to it. Any questions around the Source to Pay initiative, or you can't get a hold of me, please feel free to reach out to the Source to Pay team, and their contact email and numbers are also listed on that website. So thank you everyone for being part of Source to Pay. It's going to continue on, and in the end, I think with all of us being a part of it, we'll be able to really bring forth a process or set of processes that will really make this whole initiative a lot better for everyone. So thank you. Let me see.
Any questions on the Source to Pay initiative that come to mind now? Stay tuned, there will be opportunity to see things this fall. Next, I'd like to invite Dave Byers from Business Solutions and Support to come up and talk about the certification program, something that's very personally exciting for me.
Good afternoon. It feels too nice to be inside. We should just be rebels and all go outside and have this around a nice tree out there. It's a pleasure to be here with you today and share some information. So I plan to cover 3 topics. An overview of the status of the OBFS certification project. A subset of that is the Business Administrator certification. And then I'm going to end with just a little bit of information on the UIC Training Advisory Committee and how, if that's something you're interested in, you have an opportunity to become more involved. So in terms of the current certification programs, we have a program on service basics, service activity basics. We've partnered with government costing for that and had great participation. As you can see, strong numbers in Urbana, strong numbers here, as well as a good representation for Springfield. Upcoming certification programs, again, these are self-paced, just as the ones we looked at, targeted for rollout later this fall, journal voucher processing, department card manager, which we're partnering with University Payables, T-card certification, P-card, as well as department card manager. So recognizing some of the best ways to educate and train you and your colleagues is something that's self-paced that you can take at your own time. Other upcoming programs, these are instructor-led. We're looking at more inviting and onboarding. And this would be the second rollout of this. We've partnered with University Payroll and Benefits. We'll have 2 cohorts starting in October. So there are 25 slots open for Urbana, Springfield, and 25 slots open for UIC. And then also, near and dear to my heart, is the Business Administrator certification, which I'm going to cover next. So the current state of this particular project, we have been communicating and talking to people, for me, the last 18 months. And so it's been very exciting to talk with lots of you and others. We had a nomination process that was open this summer for 3 weeks, and we were delighted to have 212 people nominate. I was hoping all along, I said all along to people that we would get 50 to 60 people in a cohort. So this far exceeded anything I thought would happen. The selection committee, which involved the vice presidents at each campus, so Gloria Keeley here, Ginger Velasquez in Urbana, and Janet Ford in Springfield, were the selection committee using a variety of criteria, and we selected 36 at UIC, 11 at UIS, and 37 at UIUC for a total of 84. So that's going to be our first group to go through this, and we're delighted, and it starts a week from today. So I'm very excited about that. In terms of our strategy, we have been involving stakeholders all along. I remember the first focus group we had was in August of last year up here. And so we've been actively talking to you, your colleagues, and others about what needs to be in this program, how does it need to be designed. We also, at those focus groups, we called for volunteers, and we got people who want to be part of an advisory group. Those groups are looking at curriculum. So we come in with, here's the outlines for 8 courses, how's this content working for you, what might you need to add to make it even better? And then we take that back to the subject matter experts. In addition, Mike Bass, who's the Senior Associate Vice President for OBFS, and his council have been reviewing the courses each month as well. And between the 3 groups, the focus groups, the advisory groups, and Mike Bass and his council, we feel that the material is really on target. We've been communicating with the participants throughout, and we will throughout this entire program over the next 9 months. Our long-term plans, we certainly intend to review and evaluate each course after it's over. So there are 28 courses, 28 evaluations, more than 45 instructors. So we really want to get feedback on what was working, what might make it even better. We think we have to prepare for 2 cohorts in 19 because we had 212 and can only take 84. And some of that's a balance between how large do you make the rooms, you lose the intimacy if it becomes too large. And so we know next fall we're going to need to offer 2 running cohorts, perhaps simultaneously, maybe staggered a week or 2 apart, but we'll work on that. We'll work with the subject matter experts based on what we hear from the audience, how well the material's working. And our goal then is that because it's a certification program, that you'll recertify in 3 years after this year. And that's a process of involving what's changed since you got your certification. We'll make sure we keep you informed, and the test will be based on what's different between when you finished and then 3 years later. So it's not just taking training, it's about demonstrating a level of competence around understanding these important functions in running your department. And if you have any questions after this meeting, we have a website, and I'm curious, Kimberly, do the PowerPoints go out to the group, or they're able to? Okay, great, thank you. My last topic, I had the privilege to chair the UIC Training Advisory Committee. And when I first met with the committee a year ago, I asked, what is it that you do? I want to understand that. And what would you like to do? And one of the things that the committee commented on was, we'd like to get some more volunteers. I think it's just a group of 4 or 5, and we recognize the greater the representation, the more diversity, the better the experience. So if you volunteer to be part of the advisor group, it's a commitment that we look to meet 4 to 6 times in a year, so it's not very high level. What we've done previously, advise and provide input into the BAT conference and upcoming leadership conferences, and there's a possibility that we will look into helping to do a needs assessment to identify what are some further training opportunities, training needs present here at the UIC campus. And you're welcome to contact me after this if you'd like to volunteer or if you'd like to learn more. I'm happy to talk with you. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Dave. Next up is Jim Martini from University Payables to give us mostly good news today, I think.
I will answer to Darren or Susie. So, no, not if I slow down a little. There we go. I've got a few items just for your information. Most of these have been published on either the OBFS newsletter or on our website, so you don't have to write anything down. But one of the things that we want you to understand is that effective August 1st, the National RentACar, National and Enterprise Rental Car Consortium Agreement changed, and there's some terms within that contract that have changed. It still allows for personal use as a university employee. If you're going on vacation or you're traveling to wherever, you can still use the national contract. But it's sometimes referred to as collision damage waiver, CDW. Sometimes it's referred to as LDL. I don't remember what that acronym stands for. But National will no longer pay that for personal use. You're still entitled to use the National contract individually, but they will not cover the collision damage waiver. So you need to know that when you're renting a car. This is the details. The two contract numbers are listed on the webpage. I'd encourage you to go look at www.obfs.uillinois.travel. There's a lot of information out there about rental cars, airlines, arranging travel, and so on. They do exhibit significantly discounted rates. I don't think you'll be able to find a better rate on a rental car, so I really encourage you to take a look at the National Rent-A-Car site. It's included for the collision damage waiver is included for domestic business and leisure combination rentals. So if you're renting a car and you're 3 days at a conference and you're taking a day off to go someplace else, the collision damage waiver would be covered, but of course Payables would probably balk at reimbursing you for the 1 day of personal use. There's also a new commercial truck. Oh, and another thing, the membership fee to their Emerald Club is waived, and that's a little bit of a perk. You can accumulate points, you can get coupons, you can get the rent it twice, get 1 day free, that sort of thing. So that's a good perk. I did find some value in the commercial truck program. We occasionally rent U-Hauls to move lab equipment. We sometimes rent things to move, reposition things. And I'd encourage you to look at this if you have the need to rent a truck. Of course, we want to respect facilities and their capabilities, but if it's something that fits, take a look. There's a young renter fee, which will allow, if you've got a grad student or a research assistant that is under 21 or maybe 22, maybe it's 25. The fee is waived, and students are eligible renters under this contract if they're involved in university business. Now, if they're taking their fraternity down to, Palm Beach for the break, no, they are not covered, but they are covered under this contract. So these points are just all available for you out there on the website. You don't have to remember any of this. We've also seen, this is a comment about rental car companies in general, not just the National, but also the Avis, the Alamos. They're all including, or you're able to pick, sometimes not pick, but you're able to allow a token like an iPass, a way to just drive through the toll gates. Payables is reimbursing for those, but you need to be sure to describe them to us, because what they're listed on some of the many invoices or the bills, the receipts we get from the rental car companies are convenient. They're called a convenience fee. And that sort of sends up a red flag when we're looking at evaluating an expense report. If you just describe it, it was a toll device, we'll pay it. So I just wanted to make sure you were aware of that. Just describe it. Changing subjects. For a couple years now, we've had a practice within TEM that kind of nagged you whenever you had an expense item where the expense was more than 60 days old. On every line item, you had to add some verbiage that described why it was late. Well, we're doing away with that. We're going to prompt you at the end, if you're a TEM user today, when you submit your ER, the owner submits it, they're prompted with a statement that says, I attest that this is all true and correct, and so on and so forth. We're also going to say that if there was any one line that was more than 60 days old, we're going to put words on the end of the ER that say, you may need to provide justification as to why. And I emphasize the word may need to provide. So keep that information with you if you're asked about it. But you won't have to add something every line on every expense report. We went live with a phone management system on June 7th. I'm hearing good things, but then I'm not hearing a lot. It's the same phone management system that payroll uses. And we've tried to keep it very short in terms of the number of branches that you can take. One of the very first questions we ask, are you an external vendor or are you an employee? So that we get you in the right category. And we've had one number, the second bullet point is not exactly right. We've had one call since June 7th that did not get answered by a human being, at least according to these records. If you hang up, I can't help you. But if you hold on, you'll either get called back, you'll speak to someone, or you'll be able to leave a message if that's your choice within the same day. We've had one call that fell over. I can't say that was happening last year. You were waiting 3, 4, 5 days sometimes to hear back from us. I can't tell you that this is resolved in that sort of time. The issue is resolved, but I think we're doing a lot better in terms of being there, getting them routed to experts. If you've got a card question about a P card or a T card, the branches will get you there quickly and get you to the people that can answer those questions for you. When I say this is the preferred method for contacting university payables, that really only applies to new issues. If you're in progress with someone, if you've been in touch with Susie or Darren or me or Tammy Ziegler or Melissa Plotner, and they're working with you on an issue, feel free to call them directly, email them directly. I'm fine with that. But for new issues, we'd really like to encourage you to go through the touchpoint process. And I'd ask for you to let me know how it's working for you. Like I said, I haven't heard a lot, so I'm a little nervous sometimes. Okay, we did one other thing to TEM that probably brought it into line, made it a little easier on us. As Gloria pointed out, we are required as a state agency to report lodging overages to the Higher Education Travel Control Board on a quarterly basis. If you choose to stay in a hotel room that is over the state limit, which frankly they're almost impractical these days, but you have to provide a reason. And we have to report those. So if you stayed in a $300 room when the limit was $120, your name has gone to Springfield. We used to give travelers 5 choices that they could use to describe why. But the Higher Education Travel Control Board only allowed for 3 explanations. So we were constantly going through and changing selection 4 to 3 and 5 to 2 manually, whichever one made the most sense to us. So what we've done, we got rid of the 2 spares. So what happens now, you'll only see these 3 choices in TEM. We're perfectly fine within the explanation box if you just hit the number of one of those 3. Don't put 9. But you don't have to type anything. Oops, sorry. You don't have to type anything anymore. Just type 1, 3 if it's the least total cost. Fine. So we're trying to make things a little easier for you folks and a little easier for us as we go through things. So I talked rather rapidly. Do you have any questions? Anything I can address? Okay. Here's some links to those announcements. They'll be in the PowerPoint. And again, I'd encourage you to go look at the obfs.uillinois.edu travel. There's lots of information out there. And here's some contact information, all part of the PowerPoint. So, thank you.
Thanks, Jim. I happen to know that he didn't take advantage of all of his bragging rights today. I want to bring to your attention as well at fiscal year end that if you got invoices to accounts payable by the deadline, they were looked at so that they got into the right fiscal year appropriately if everything was flowing properly, if there were no exceptions to it. So it was the first time for a very long time that an accounts payable queue hit 0 on a day, and it was very exciting. I think the travel reimbursement or the expense reimbursement process is moving pretty quickly as well. Generally, the queues are within a week, so thanks to Jim and his staff for keeping that moving. Well, I was going to do a break now, but everybody is being incredibly efficient today, so we don't have to do a break. So I'm going to bring up Stephanie Dable and Brian Shadell from AITS. Our colleagues there are doing some research for us on behalf of the university around ERP replacement, what our next steps might be, and they've got some information for you today.
Do you want to do this first?
Hi, everyone. I'm Stephanie Dable. I'm from AITS, and I just wanted to give a quick update on where we're at with Banner 9. I think everybody knows that it's coming, but just want to make sure that everybody is prepared. We are going live on Sunday, October 14th, and just a reminder that this is just the administrative pages. So this is just the Oracle forms that you're used to using now. These are going to be in web pages, so self-service is not changing. This is really just look and feel. So navigation, the GUI interface, all of that is what's changing. The process, what you use to do your daily business, those processes aren't changing. So it's just that look and feel. The other thing that we want to make sure everybody knows is that Banner 8, when you come in on Monday, October 15th, that's not going to be available. So Banner 9 is what you will use. So we just are trying to make sure that you're familiar with Banner 9 before you come into work on October 15th. So we have some resources available. Hopefully you're getting the communications that we're sending out on a monthly basis. We have this website that's available. We have a playground environment. It's this Band 9 train. You can go in there. You can do everything that you have access to do in production today. So you can go in there. You can practice doing what you're used to doing today. On that website, we have an overview video. We have a lot of documentation. That video takes about 20 minutes, but it kind of steps you through all of the changes that you'll see in Banner 9 if you haven't already looked at it. Just quick show of hands, has anybody been in this playground environment, the Band 9 train? Okay, that's pretty good. The website also has a good list of frequently asked questions. So it kind of, if something doesn't look right to you or if something seems strange, you might find that on that list of frequently asked questions. The last thing I wanted to point out is that you may have seen an email, I think it came out last Tuesday, about some webinars that AITS is going to do. Those are happening 2 weeks. So there will be a separate one for each of finance, HR, payroll, and student. So the dates are up there. But what those will be is just AITS is going to do a quick overview again, just of what the Banner 9 pages are going to look like, some of the changes to the navigation, the look and feel. We're not going to show you how to do your process because again, those processes aren't changing, but it's just another introduction to what Banner 9 looks like. So just real quick, wanted to make sure you guys were all aware. You're getting out there, you're looking around so that everybody is ready when Banner 9 is out there come October 15th. So any questions about Banner 9? Okay, now we'll go back to our ERP stuff.
Hello, everybody. My name is Brian Shadell. I work at AITS as well. I manage our application administration group, so my group's responsible for the Banner software. administration of it. Stephanie, she manages more of the system analyst and works with closer with folks like you. So we're here to talk about planning for change beyond Banner 9. So Stephanie just talked about the upgrade, which is going in place next month, but we want to kind of talk more about, all right, we've been on Banner since 2000, 2001. Is there something we need to be doing different? Do we need to be looking at other systems? So we're just kind of gathering information at this point. So why are we here? So like I just mentioned, we've been on Banner since 2001. Dr. Wilson, along with university leadership, kind of tasked AITS with, doing an assessment of, where we are with Banner, where do we need to go? Should we stay on Banner? Are there other systems we should be looking at? Are there other systems we should be tweaking? What could we do better? What is, causing pain in all your jobs out there? And then Stephanie is going to talk about business process improvement, which is a big part of this process. So a brief history of Banner. So the UI Integrate project, which kicked off in the year 2000 for roughly $200 million with about 200 full-time employees, was basically the Banner implementation project. That project was fully completed in 2005, and then in March of 2006, we did the first major upgrade to Banner version 7. October of 2009, we upgraded to Banner 8, and then in September of 2014, we started rolling out the self-service modernizations, mostly in the areas of student. You guys, I'm guessing, are all finance folks, so that's yet to come. That's going to be after the Banner 9 forms implementation this fall. But in terms of the self-service modernizations, we did the faculty grade entry app, the new enhanced student registration application. There was a events management application that we also rolled out as part of that. And then next month, Stephanie talked about the administrative forms modernization, so that goes in mid-October. And then at the completion of that, we're going to start phasing out the existing Banner 8 self-service application infrastructure and start rolling out the rest of the student changes. We're going to roll out the finance changes as well as HR. So in terms of ERP planning, so Stephanie and I were kind of put in charge of this project probably about a year ago. I think we started last September. So we've done a lot of work in regards to this. So we've talked to a lot of the analysts out there, the analyst groups. We've met with a number of folks from Gartner. We bought a Tambellini Group subscription, so if you're not familiar with them, they do a lot of research in higher education purchases. So they can, they provide these nice reports and they kind of summarize what all the other schools are doing. What systems are they buying? What finance systems are they buying? Who's moving to what ERP are other schools going to? So that sort of thing. So that's been very helpful. We've also talked to a number of peer institutions, a lot of our Big Ten folks. We've talked to other, similar sized schools like LSU, other Banner schools, Notre Dame, Texas Tech. And then we've read a bunch of articles in terms of like ERP planning and, how you should kind of approach this type of project. So in terms of, what we learned from schools that are moving to a new ERP system, we're kind of thinking about it. We've kind of boiled it down to 6 reasons down here. So we talked to LSU, and kind of in their case, they were on this old mainframe system that was going away in 2 years. So they went out and bought the Workday application. They basically had to get off their mainframe, so they had to do something. They couldn't just simply stay on the mainframe and kind of let it die and go away. We talked to Ohio State. They're also going to Workday. They were on an old PeopleSoft finance system that would have taken them millions of dollars to simply upgrade the system and bring it up to date. There's security folks that said that, you guys are, it's a huge security risk to stay on this version of PeopleSoft, so you guys need to do something. So they're doing a big Workday implementation. Loss of in-house support is another reason to go to another ERP system. So in the case of LSU as well, a lot of the staff that had kind of put this mainframe system in place in the early 80s or whatever, a lot of those folks had since retired or were retiring soon. So that's not something you can go out and really hire those folks to say, come in here and support this mainframe system that was built 30 years ago. So that was another reason for them to go to Workday. In the case of Rutgers University, they had a merging of the main university along with the dental school, so they ended up with, multiple ERP systems. So their president said, we need to get this down to one ERP system, so they're kind of in the process of consolidating. And then in the case of Notre Dame, they're also a Banner school. They are staying on Banner, but instead of running it on premise, they decided to move everything out to AWS, which is Amazon Web Services. So they moved the entire Banner infrastructure along with everything else into the cloud. And they finished that project probably this past summer. I think they've got about everything moved over, and so far with good results. They're really pleased with it running out in the cloud. But they are staying on Banner. They're just not running it locally, since they didn't want to spend millions of dollars to upgrade their data centers. And then the last reason, and Stephanie's going to talk about this more, is the lack of functionality. So we don't know if that exists here at the University of Illinois. We've done a number of these meetings, and as far as what we're hearing, people aren't saying, Banner's broken, we need to get rid of it. There's not a huge drive to get onto something else. But with that being said, we wanted to present to you as well and get your feedback on, what might not be working with Banner or other systems for that matter. So I guess I'll turn it over to Stephanie.
Okay, so I guess before I move forward, are there any questions about what Brian said? Yeah.
From your previous comment, is EDW being affected by this change or any of our reporting tools?
Oh, sure. So the question was, is the EDW, is the warehouse or any of the reporting tools being affected by this? So this is really just kind of an analysis to figure out, what direction we might want to go with any of our ERP or any of our other existing applications. So if we were to consider a whole new ERP, the EDW and reporting would definitely have to be considered. Yeah. Any other questions before I talk about this? Okay, so like Brian said, as we've been talking to all of these different schools and all of the different analysts, business process improvement is a huge piece of every project. Brian mentioned Ohio State and their Workday project. They are in parallel to implementing Workday doing a whole business process improvement project, and that's already extended the life of their project by about a year. So they have about a 5-year project to implement Workday. All of these other schools that we've talked to have stressed how important business process improvement is, and I think and you all know this based on source to pay. I mean, it's a huge piece of the puzzle. So what we have been trying to do is really to understand what the appetite is for kind of change to business process, just change management in general at the university, if we were to look at something besides Banner. I think many of you may be aware, if you were around back when we implemented Banner, we had upwards of 200 modifications to the system. I mean, that's not just to finance, but that's to the whole system. If you move to something like Workday, which is one source for the code, you can't make those modifications. So you can configure the system, but you can't really modify the system. So that means business process has to really be a big part of that implementation. So that's why we're going out and talking to folks just to figure out what direction you all are interested in going. So what we've been doing is we've been talking to governance groups, we've been talking to business user groups across all the different universities, across all the different functions, finance, HR, student, to get a good feel for, what you're interested in, what is your appetite for change, what do you think is working, what is not working. So we're asking these 3 questions. We've had some conversations, and then we're also sending out a survey that has these questions because we really want your feedback. So we'll get the survey sent out to all of you after this meeting. But the first question that we're interested in is, what business processes that you use every day need improvement? What's inefficient? What causes you a headache every day? What is duplicative? What's complex? I don't know if there are things, that you can think of right off the top of your head right now that you're just dying to, get into the survey. But we've heard a lot of things in these meetings. One example that we hear a lot is the granting of security, the USC process. We hear that a lot. We've heard a lot about the hiring process. We hear a lot about just the massive number of systems that are out there, and you have to go to so many different systems to get your job done. So there's just a variety of things that people are talking about. The second question that we're asking is in regards to the actual applications. Are there pain points with some of the specific applications that you use? Things that need improvement, and then we're asking, what would you like to see improved in some of these systems? And then finally, is there functionality that doesn't exist today that you would like to see, that would help make your job easier, further the mission of the university, just something that you would make your life easier if it just existed. So that's kind of what we've been doing is going out, trying to gather this information. Like Brian said, we're not really hearing that people are ready to ditch Banner and go to something else, but we are hearing that there are things that could certainly be improved. And so that's the feedback that we really want from you. So as far as what we're doing with this information, like I said, we are sending out this survey, we're collecting all that information, we'll compile the results, and then in about 3 weeks, we have a follow-up meeting with Dr. Wilson, Dr. Ghosh, Dr. Seidel, and President Colleen to kind of give them all of this information and have them, kind of absorb it and see what direction they would like us to go. I think there's a couple different outcomes. We could certainly make some targeted improvements to what we currently have, to those systems that we currently have. Based on that feedback, we may have, a top 5, a top 10 list of these are the things that if we could make some changes, make some improvements, we could certainly improve the day-to-day life of everybody here. We may decide that, to move forward with a business process improvement, maybe we need to bring in some consultants. Maybe we need some professionals that do this, and we want to move forward for a multi-year engagement for something like that. We may decide that maybe we just keep an eye on this and we look at it again in the next few years. I'm not entirely sure what direction we'll go, but we'll at least have talked to a lot of people. We've gathered the feedback and presented it to our senior leadership. So that's what we're doing. We definitely want your feedback. So like I said, we'll get the survey sent today, and we'll look forward to your feedback. So are there any questions about what we've been doing or what we're asking you to provide for us? Okay. Thank you for giving us the time today.
Okay. Next, we have information from Aaron Rosenthal, UIC Purchasing, various updates.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Aaron Rosenthal, Assistant Director of Contracts and Systems for UIC Purchasing. Our Director, Deborah Matlock, unfortunately could not be with us today due to a conflict. I'm here today to share various quick updates on a number of recent activities for UIC Purchasing. When I say recent, several of these do go back all the way to July 1st and were communicated through other channels as well. However, due to the craziness of fiscal year end, we now have a chance to take a breath and refresh you on some of these core updates along with some others. First up, we have the new Contract for Procurement of Supplies and Services template, or the POSS template for short. This template is replacing the contract formerly known as the Contract for Procurement of Services. Now, why is UIC Purchasing tinkering with the contract templates yet again? This was to address a specific need for us to have a contract template that applies not only to services, but to goods as well. And goods are referred to as supplies in the Illinois Procurement Code, but this is something that will apply to services as well as all goods. When we went in to update this template, we also took the opportunity to make a number of other updates, primarily to give the university greater protections in areas such as intellectual property. As always, usage of a standard university template is going to greatly expedite the contract process. So we now are in this great position where if we have a purchase that requires a contract, and even if it is for goods, we can tell the vendor, please work off of our standard university template. Just as before, the new POSS template is still a smart form, which means there's essentially a cover page that you fill in various pieces of information to, click a Generate Contract button, and the contract will automatically populate for you. All of these updates that I'm sharing with you today relate specifically to the POSS template. This is the template that comes to UIC Purchasing for processing. These are not any updates that have an impact on our customer's preferred template, which is the contract for services under $10,000, that being the template that doesn't involve us. So no changes to the contract for services under $10,000. Next up, by just a show of hands, how many people in the room are from units that process purchases for radioactive materials in any capacity? We've got AJ lurking in the back, at least one. So we'll touch upon this real briefly, but effective immediately, we have a brand new form in iBuy known as the radioactive substances form. It's got a parenthetical denoting that this is for UIC only, and this is now going to be the only authorized method for purchasing radioactive materials at UIC. This form addresses a couple of very important needs for these very high risk and potentially dangerous purchases. Most notably, any purchase that is made on this radioactive substances form is always going to route to the radiation safety section of the Environmental Health and Safety Office, EHSO. And what that's going to do is allow this section that is tasked with really ensuring radiation safety for all of UIC to review a number of core pieces of information, which are now captured on that form, including the project number, who the principal investigator is, along with the radioactive material type. All of that's ultimately going to help ensure that when one of these purchases comes through, that it's specifically an authorized purchase. It's important to note that this new and improved form is distinct from the old controlled substance form. So if you are purchasing radioactive materials of any sort, please be sure to use the latest and greatest form. Any more general questions related to purchases of radioactive material should be directed specifically to the radiation safety section of EHSO. Next one we're going to hit just real briefly, there were a number of minor updates made to the purchase order terms and conditions at the start of the fiscal year. Most of these were really just to bring some greater consistency between the POs and the contract templates that we've also been making updates to. All of these changes are now effectuated with the goal of standardizing everything between iBuy and banner POs plus the contract templates. And one additional minor update that was made was just notating the contract signature block that does appear on that purchase order, which is a valid contract, noting the official current comptroller's name and title. This next one is something that we really wanted to further highlight today, the TEM allowable payments list. And this is something that was teed up at BMG AFO a long while back, but we're now on the cusp of actually going live with this, so really wanted to refresh you on exactly what this is, what the potential implications are, and to keep you in the loop about how this is going to ultimately be publicized. So what is the TEM allowable payments list? This replaces an old document known as the direct pay exception list. And if you weren't familiar with that old document, we can't fault you. It had a name that didn't really reflect exactly what it was. It wasn't really easy to find. And we're really hoping with this new document and the improvements that we're putting in place that all of that's going to change. What this document is, just like the title suggests, is the comprehensive list of what can and can't be submitted for payment in TEM. So with the updated name of this document, along with the work that we did to revise the document, there are several notable changes that were made. First and foremost, and near and dear to my heart, working in contracts, is that the updated TEM allowable payments list formally now notes in a document that the only contracts that are appropriately submitted for payment in TEM are ones on certain standard university contract templates. And for most of you in this room, that's really only talking about the contract for services under $10,000 template. Contracts on the other contract template, the one that I just talked about, so contracts on the contract for procurement of supplies and services, contracts on the vendor's own form, none of those are appropriately submitted for payment in TEM. For many of you, you're probably thinking that's not a change, and it really shouldn't be. But when we took a look at what was getting submitted in TEM, we were somewhat alarmed to see that all sorts of different contracts had been historically submitted by various units. So we're really looking to clean that up and again, formally capture that the only contract template that should really be submitted in TEM for payment is the contract for services under $10,000. We also helped streamline this document further. The old direct pay exceptions list tried to pull in some content related to P and T card usage. Really wasn't appropriately captured in this document. Those rules on restricted, prohibited card usage live somewhere else, specifically in the OBFS University Card Programs webpage. Lastly, and also very notably, the updated TEM allowable payments list document does add, remove, and clarify various items that had formerly appeared on the old direct pay exceptions list, and I'm going to highlight that a little bit in the next couple slides as well. The updated TEM allowables payment list does add and acknowledge now that miscellaneous employee reimbursements up to $500 are appropriately paid in TEM. It also captures that financial support payments are payable in TEM in accordance with that policy that was updated not too long ago. There are a handful of items that were removed from the old direct pay exceptions list for this new document. Most of the removals were really rooted in the fact that these items being taken off the list are purchases. So they're much better addressed with a purchase order as opposed to being submitted in TEM as an expense reimbursement. There were also a handful of items clarified on this updated document. The first couple with regards to the specific dollar thresholds that apply, but also a couple of additional specific clarifications. For conference registrations, if there's an exhibit booth rental involved, again, TEM, not the appropriate place for submitting that, most likely a purchase order with also a potential contract involved as well. A clarification was made about some of the royalties that have historically been submitted in TEM. The only ones that are now allowed in TEM are ones where specifically the university has at least partial ownership. And then lastly, the document formally captures a change that was previously made, that human subject payments not made via a program advance are appropriately submitted in TEM for payment. With all of that said, it's easy for us to say from our perspective that this document is helping us to clean things up. We recognize, though, that this is going to represent a change potentially to some units more than others, depending on what had been submitted by your unit in TEM. And to that effect, we're making sure that we roll this out very deliberately, which is part of why, even though this was teed up a long while back, we're now back in front of you. We've been doing a lot of work to make sure that this is done in a way that makes sense. So the first piece that I really want to highlight, and as was mentioned earlier, the slide deck will be sent out. The actual document itself, as of today, because it's not yet live in policy, is still out there though, somewhere that you can view it. It's specifically in the OBFS policy blog. That's similar to the blog where the open comments typically live. So please, please, I strongly encourage everyone, when you receive the slide deck, if you haven't already seen this document, please go to that link, take a look and closely review. Today I'm really only to provide a high-level overview of what these changes are. It's really important to take a look. And with that document in hand, that's really gearing up to the next stage of this rollout, which is going to be for the months of October through December. We're going to be in the, quote, soft rollout period. Again, we recognize there's going to be a learning curve to all of this. Of course, any change is going to have some transition involved, but this one does have some potential significant impacts. So what's going to happen during that soft rollout phase is that, let's say you've taken a look at that document, you go ahead and someone in your unit submits something in TEM for payment during the soft rollout. They're doing their best to comply, but they somehow missed something that was actually prohibited for payment in TEM. The ER submitter is going to receive a message letting them know, by the way, what you submitted is actually technically prohibited under this new document. However, during the soft rollout, it will still get paid. So we're strongly encouraging people to take a look at that document, get familiar with it. We're really asking you to try and do the right thing, and as soon as possible, start to reorient yourselves towards this new framework, but we recognize that it will be a learning curve during that period. And all of that is ultimately gearing up to the true go live, which is scheduled for January 1st of the upcoming calendar year. As of January 1st, any of those ERs that are submitted for items that are prohibited on the TEM allowable payments list will be rejected. So really want to emphasize that this is a pretty significant change for many of you. Recognizing that it is that change, we're very open to any feedback that you have during this go live process. As you're looking through that document, please do let us know. And ultimately though, the goal of all of this is to further reduce the number of TEM rejections, which is something that I know no one in this room, whether sitting on our side of the room or on the customer side, likes. And the way that this is going to help with that is by actually documenting exactly what is and isn't supposed to be submitted in TEM for payment, which we know is an area of a lot of confusion and questions over the years. Leading with this next piece of good news that I have the pleasure of delivering today, wanted to talk just briefly about small purchase requirements and multiple quotes. In the Illinois procurement rules, which interpret the Illinois procurement code, there is some language that says that small purchases must ensure maximum reasonable competition. So the rules are somewhat vague in terms of what that actually entails, but there is in fact an OBFS policy that went live a while back, section 7.2.3, which touches upon this a little bit more, based on some very recent scrutiny in the area of small purchases that's really coming at us from all directions by a wide variety of stakeholders. Effective October 1st, any requisitions of $10,000 or more are going to require evidence be attached to the requisition that multiple quotes were sought. Multiple, meaning more than one. So we're looking for evidence that at least 2 quotes was sought on that small purchase requisition. And iBuy is going to allow you to actually submit that evidence in the system itself. So you can submit either the actual quotes themselves as internal attachments to the iBuy requisition, or evidence that you sought the quote. So whether that's documenting that you tried calling a vendor, perhaps unsuccessfully, we're just looking to have evidence in the file so that when any number of the stakeholders that have direct oversight of our transactions ultimately pulls the transaction and says, why are we not in compliance with the Illinois procurement rule or our own policy on this matter, we'll be able to point to the file and demonstrate that a good faith effort was made to comply. So again, that good faith effort can take the form of the actual quotes, documentation that you tried to obtain the quotes, and then also wanted to highlight that within that OBFS policy, there is a document known as the small purchase waiver form. The idea of that small purchase waiver form is that there very well may be certain situations where it's just physically impossible to obtain the multiple quotes. Perhaps it's a small purchase and it's kind of like what we refer to as a sole source in the purchasing realm, in that there's only one vendor out there. Perhaps it's something that's patented. Only one vendor actually provides that. It's still a small purchase, so we at least don't have to go through that long formal state sole source process. You can then attach that small purchase waiver form in lieu of the other evidence of the multiple quotes to satisfy this requirement. Wanted to end with a quick snapshot of some FY18 UIC purchasing metrics, along with a big thank you to you, all of our UIC purchasing customers. Most notably, in FY18, we saw nearly a 20% increase in the volume of two-party contracts that were routed to our department. Why is that happening? Part of that was likely due to the updated risk management insurance matrix that went live. Part of that risk management insurance matrix did formally document certain situations where a two-party contract is always required. However, we also know that the reason why we're seeing more contracts routed to us is because you, our customer partners, are trying to do things the right way. You're trying to make sure that your transactions are properly documented, and as a result, you've been routing more contracts to us. So we are genuinely appreciative of that, even though it does mean more work. We're always looking to do things the right, compliant way while still delivering customer service. So thank you for working with us and for your patience as we evolved and kind of retooled the team to address that greater volume. Also, now that we have a chance to step back from the end of the fiscal year, just thank you as always for everything that you do. We know that navigating through this crazy state environment, all of the universities, policies, and rules and procedures is not easy, and we cannot do that without all of you. So to quote Deborah, who's not here, because I'd get in trouble if I didn't, we remain very committed to delivering excellent customer service. With all of that said, I know that that hit a number of different topics kind of all over the map today. Any questions about anything that was covered? Yep. Yep. So, sure. The question from Joe in the back was small purchase. What is the dollar threshold for that requirement kicking in? We are following the $10,000 threshold for when that requirement would kick in. So although ensuring maximum reasonable competition is not established at any particular dollar level in the procurement rules, so we always encourage you to try and do what you can to ensure maximum reasonable competition. We recognize here at U of I, we have, among other things, the contract for services under $10,000. We have an iBuy workflows where requisitions on that non-catalog form go out the door if they're below $10,000 without coming to purchasing. So we're specifically going to be monitoring the requisitions that are at $10,000 or more for demonstrating that those multiple quotes were sought or that the small purchase waiver form is provided. Yeah. Sure. No, so the question was whether that requirement only applies to single purchases or potentially to multiple purchases under things like standing orders, et cetera. This is not limited to regular order, so it would potentially apply to standing orders as well. Ultimately, again, depending on the circumstances of that standing order, there may be certain circumstances where the small purchase waiver form is appropriate if, again, it is something like a sole source. But otherwise, even for standing orders, we would be expecting to see similar documentation that those multiple quotes were sought. Anything else? Yep, back to Joe. So the comment from Joe was that in the process of potentially rejecting these ERs for not complying with the TEM allowable payments list, essentially it's great that we're letting the ER submitter know what happened, but that rejection notification does not raise awareness to the manager, for example, in that department. I defer to Gloria or Jim as far as are there potentially, and maybe it's a discussion we could pursue, any reporting mechanisms that could potentially be utilized, or perhaps it's maybe coming back to this audience in front of you all to note some of the common problems that we're seeing once that goes live.
We are still working out the details on how to get those notifications to you, but I'll work with Jim and University Payables to see what we can do to get those notifications to multiple people. At the very least, as Aaron suggested, we can come back to this group and report what we're seeing in terms of trends so that you can be aware of it.
Anything else? Going once? All right, thank you all.
Okay, I'm going to make an executive decision here and say we're not going to have a break because we're moving so quickly, we'll be done soon. With that, I'd like to bring up Scott Zalatoris to give some additional updates on OBFS policy and procedure changes.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Scott Zalatoris. I'm with the Office of Business and Financial Services in the Policy Division, responsible for Policy and Procedure Manual, the process, and all the wonderful rules everybody loves to read and follow. So I appreciate that. Today, I'll just give a brief discussion, a few updates on the Policy Manual, recent policy updates, upcoming policy updates, and then I'll offer any opportunity to ask questions and additional resources that are available. As always, policy manual updates are added to the updates webpage. This basically displays the change that was made, listed out by fiscal year and then by month. So the name of the policy and a brief summary of what was changed. Give you an example of why it's useful. In FY18, there were 70 updates made to the manual. I'll always communicate major updates through OBFS News Service. I'll come to this group. But when we do make smaller, low-impact changes, usually tax-related, they're always documented there. So far, fiscal year 19, we've made 11 updates. There may be a couple more when I made this slide. And always encourage you to please sign up for the OBFS News Service. At the bare minimum, a policy change will be communicated that way. We're also looking for other ways, DDDHs and a few other things. And then every time I come here until someone tells me not to, I will encourage you to please download new forms every time you use them. We do regularly update the forms, and an old form is a really easy way to get something slowed down or rejected. So please don't save them locally. Always go to the source and download a new form every time you use it. Okay, recent policy updates. So I've just picked a few higher level ones that impact, I think, many of you. The first is 8.7 cell phone and data plan business expenses. So there has been another change to this policy in the last month or so, and the major change, stipends are no longer allowed. There was a communication sent out in June, and this policy was updated and put into effect August 16th, so a few weeks ago. Stipends are no longer allowed. Unit-owned mobile communications equipment purchases are allowed, but the focus for you all here in UIC and for each university is that the university itself is allowed to put in additional policies and procedures in place. What does that mean for you? UIC has a mobile equipment purchase form. The form is available through the ACCC mobile phone office or through the 8.7 policy. You can find it. It's got the UIC specific procedure. It's got the contact information. And then it has the form to complete, which gets sent to ACCC to process the purchase. ACCC is the authorized office at this university to process mobile communication equipment purchases. The next major update, this impacts anybody who has external audit reviews, consulting engagements. This has been a process for several years, but was just put in place over the summer, formally in policy. If you contract with external auditors or any sort of consultants, any resulting draft or final work product that you receive, subject to a few exclusions which are outlined in the policy, should be submitted to the system offices for our review annually. The idea is if you find something in an internal audit that's materially impacts your unit, it may also materially impact other units. It's one of the major reasons we're asking you to do this. The process has been in place for years. It's not a material change to you, but we do have the policy in place now. That's 9.3. I will offer a slight emendation. This will be a recent policy update as of tomorrow. I tried really hard to get it done before this meeting, but it didn't quite make the cut. So we have 3 changes to property accounting policies. The first is an updated biennial inventory policy. This is related to the new biennial inventory system application change that was made. The policy and procedure now show what you have to do in terms of using the new system, the new certifications, and it's important to note that the paper certifications will no longer be accepted. So tomorrow, when I get this out, you'll see a communication go out. This was already in the open comment period. The new policy and procedure will be there, and there'll be contact information for OBFS property accounting for who you can speak to directly if you have questions about how this impacts your unit. This is one of the 3. The next 2 are related to transferring equipment, research transfers and non-research related transfers. And this is more of a change in terms of the forms you fill out and the process we take internally. Basically, if you're looking to transfer research equipment with a researcher who's leaving the university to another institution, the form has been updated to show we have internal compliance requirements such as import-export control. We're also putting together a formal agreement because we're essentially transferring the equipment out of the university system. So a binding agreement will be created. It also applies to non-permanent equipment transfers. The impact to you is minimal. There's a new form. There are a few more people that are going to look at it, but if you've done equipment transfers before, the spreadsheet asking for the description and the serial number and does this have data and things like that is all the same, but a new form with clarified instructions and some additional information about the process. These also have to go to the central management services, different things like that. So some of the people involved hopefully give you an explanation of what's going on behind the scenes. So sometimes when it takes a while, where it is in the process, and then contact information for anybody in those different offices. A policy-related update that I'd just like to highlight. Several months ago, we put out a new fraud prevention and awareness webpage, OBFS in concert with the Ethics and Compliance Office, and I'd just like to point it out. We're always looking for ways to improve our awareness, to prevent fraud, to identify areas of non-compliance related to any of these ethics concerns. It's not just financial, but we have a resource available that talks about the different fraud and ethics policies at the university system. There's a video that explains some things to look for as business managers, as university employees. Not a new policy, but it's a new resource that's available at the bottom of the table of contents of the manual. Communication already went out several months ago, but just like to remind people it's there. Encourage you to look at it. Upcoming policy updates. Jim or Gloria mentioned the relocation payments. So when I was here in May, I said this will start in earnest over the summer, and I'm here to say it will start in earnest over the fall. It's been pushed back slightly, but essentially what we're looking at is a complete rework of the policies, meaning we have what's allowable and non-allowable payments that was based on the old qualified versus not qualified tax implications. The Tax Cuts and Job Act changed that. Everything is taxable now. So with that legal basis changing, we're now looking at can we streamline and give units more certitude in terms of what it is they want to reimburse. We're looking at different things like caps and items and things like that. So you will see proposals coming out to you through the normal policy process, but if you are a unit that does a lot of relocating, that has a lot of experience in this, please contact me. As we're putting together that initial proposal, we'd like to get as many of these ideas in it before we present it back out, but this will be a comprehensive review process, so please contact us if you've looked at this for the past 10 years and thought, God, I wish they could do this. This is the time. And then the last Aaron already touched on is the request direct payments for approved goods and services, the TEM allowable payments list. Aaron referenced the policy blog. The blog has the old list, the new list, the changes, the policy, the list themselves, and then contact information for UIC purchasing. This is the direct URL. It's on mine, it's on Aaron's, it's on the policy blog. You can email either one of us. It's out there, so you can see the list. And you've got several months as you learn to start to consider how to change your purchases. So, high-level overview. It's been an eventful summer, but hopefully this will give you an idea of some of the major changes that have impacted you. As always, I'm here as a resource. Got my email address, my phone number. Every time I come up here, a few more people contact me directly, and I always encourage you to keep doing that. I say I may not know the answer to your problem, but I definitely know the person who can help. So, is there any questions I can address while I'm up here now? Okay. Please feel free to contact me.
Okay, today, last but certainly not least, Colleen Kehoe is here to give us an update on the activities from the reporting subcommittee.
Good afternoon, everyone. We took a little bit of a break over the summer with the reporting subcommittee. We took off from our July meeting because we know that's crazy for everybody. But we're back in full swing, and I just wanted to remind everyone that we're out there. This is our membership. It seems to grow and grow, so we are very happy with that, and we're also always happy to have new members join us as well. I just wanted to give you a little update on where we're going this year and remind you of where we've been. In FY17, what we really focused on was promoting existing reports that were out there. FY18, we focused on expanding the reporting user base by doing some educational activities and making reports more easily accessible to people. This year, we're kind of going back to our roots and planning to develop some new reports. So the ones we're starting to work on right now, some reports related to proposals and awards using the new pre-award data. T-card and P-card holders report. This is something that has come up in several contexts where colleges and units will want to know who is currently holding P-cards and T-cards, even if they're not necessarily using them. So that's something that we'll be working on. And also a list of all the valid CFOPs for an org. Again, looking for CFOPs that are not necessarily being used currently, so maybe they could be terminated or gotten rid of, and to simplify that list for a department. We're also working on updating some existing reports. For example, we have a number of reports that are using the old pre-award universes, and those are being updated with the help of decision support. And those are also going to be rewritten to use some of the new MyUI Financials universes, and that will improve their performance a lot. I also wanted to remind you that we are available to help people in your unit who might be interested in learning more about reporting. So we've made the offer to do presentations at colleges or units or groups who want to learn more about reporting, and we could come and do that for your unit. No one has taken us up on it yet, so maybe yours will be the first. So if you're interested in that, you can email reports@uic.edu, or you can feel free to contact me. We also have a listserv. It's a low volume listserv, but we do put out information related to reporting. It's also a listserv that any members can email to if they need reports. You can say, hey, does anybody have a report that does this, or I'm having a problem with that, can you point me to some resources? So you'll receive these slides later, but there's information on how to join that listserv, and I promise it's very low volume. It's also moderated for relevance, so you're not going to receive like spam or ads or anything like that. Finally, just wanted to remind you how to visit our website. We have a set of reports out there that our committee has either developed or recommended that are developed by other groups. It's linked from the OBFS website. That's probably the easiest way to find it. You'll find it under the resources section down near the bottom of that list. I also included the direct URL, and if you are prompted for a login, just use your NetID and password. If you'd like to join the committee, feel free to contact me or any other member of our leadership team. We meet the first Wednesday of every month, and this year we've started alternating East and West Campus to make it a little easier for people on the East Campus to participate. And also, you don't have to be an expert in reporting to join the committee. We do have some experts in reporting, but we also have a number of people who need reports or have an interest in reports, but maybe don't have the skills to develop them themselves. So it's actually a really good combination of the people who need solutions and some people who can provide solutions. So feel free to join us if you're interested. And that's all.
Okay, the Office of Procurement Diversity asked me to give an announcement. They're unable to be here today because they have a major vendor fair in Springfield tomorrow, so they're all scurrying around getting ready for that. But they asked me to announce a save the date for the annual construction summit. It's going to be held here on campus on November 1st at Student Center East. They'll be sending a lot more information through OBFS News and other venues around that, but hold November 1st if you have an interest in the annual Construction Summit. Also, I had a thought while we were hearing the information about the small purchase quotes. I have to channel my Office of Procurement Diversity friends and say it would be wonderful if one of those quotes that you attach to your small purchases is for a diverse vendor, and even more wonderful if the diverse vendor is selected, so consider that. I wanted to mention today before we close that my colleague Bernadette Rossmore, who is usually the coordinator for these meetings, had a baby a couple of weeks ago. She's doing well, and she has a gorgeous new little girl, but we miss her, and I want to give a special shout out to Kimberly Spring-Jones, who allowed us to do this meeting today without a hitch. I couldn't get through this without Kim, so thank you, Kim. Any last questions or comments for today? Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry to do this to you. I thought I was going to be able to repeat what you were saying, but now I'm going to make you come up here and say it to the microphone so people watching remotely can know that information too.
So hi everyone, my name is Magdalena Yah. I'm the new surplus coordinator in property accounting, and I just want to remind everybody that the biennial inventory is in full swing for the West Campus, Chicago campus. It's due March 31st. We are offering classes on the new biennial inventory system. So if you'd like to sign up, if you'd like to have your unique contacts and the new specialist role sign up, please do. The next classes are September 14, 27, October 5th. The East Side will be following next year about this time, and also the recycling fair will be upcoming next week. The East Side will be the first, and then following will be the West Side. If you have any questions, please send the property accounting your email. Thank you.
Thanks so much for doing that twice. Okay, I guess we're at the point where I wish everyone having a good fall, and the next time I see you, I expect we'll all be wearing coats. So, see you soon.